Hello and welcome. This is your crypto a day morning for today's date, which comes in that of the 31st of January, 2019. Litecoin against that of Bitcoin has had a move above the 18 average of highs after it flattened out for a while, getting above such and now coming back to the 18 and here again and starting to maintain an uptrend, getting out above the 938 change level in this area right around here. 940 might be a better number, and then I'd be looking for this to have a retest back at the point oh 0.01 handle once again. All bets, trades of the like, that's within each zone risk reward. Let's take a look at Bitcoin and finish it off within the Super Bowl props. But for now, we have the third day of just going sideways at an area resisting the general area of support. Not quite even to this number here, but resisting the 18 average of lows. And if you can say it's a weak setup, at least that's what I'm saying it is right now. But it hasn't done anything yet in showing any type of major breakdowns after the last leg lower, which came in after it had this rally or this sell-off instantly come back, a failed breakdown rather. But when it had its breakout opportunity, it obviously struggled very much so amongst the 18 as it found support, but it didn't rally after finding support. And then you had the sell-off that got rejected immediately and back to its previous congestion area, but the next time it didn't get rejected, at least not as of yet, not on this time frame, because it did have a leg lower. And now within this move in here, if this move fails, we're seeing the 18 correction again from today's move. That weakness amongst here, seeing it fall below, I'd be expecting a lower low from 33.22 and probably to go, well, for short-term analysis, I'd be looking at the 3100 and change mark. Getting out above this level of resistance that has now been established on three different periods, the 7-hour, the 11-hour, and this one here on the 19. It barely got above it before. It did strengthen this area, but getting up above here, you have a decent chance of having a nice leg higher, but it's got a long ways to go. We can see the overall volatility shrinking compared to what was going on pretty much even before. From this point on is when the volatility came to a completion. As far as consistently, for the most part, every single day being very, very good. A lot of these low days is the case, and oftentimes in the indecision types of modes, which this is in, as you can pretty much put this in a range-bound market of around 42 to 4300 as the upper resistance tier, and even as it goes, the one-time hit only area of 3100 is a part of it. But we also got this level of key support here that is entangling with now the November area, the lower end of this little type of sideways range, and you can say it's been in it now pretty much since right before US Thanksgiving, or all of December, and now all of January, and a bit more. So therefore 2.5 months within this sideways mode, because as we stand, this thing is going to have to either make its move. We take a look at this on a weekly and have another leg lower, which would be looking at probably 23, 20, and that's conservative even. Although, yeah, definitely you could have a conservative level here. Not to throw that part aside, although more of a failed breakdown here. And then this thing goes down to a previous level of resistance at about that of 1,000, maybe a little above 1,200. As since the move from breaking down below the 18, it's two just sideways moves. That shows more of that indecision that is being referred to amongst it. But overall, in the bearish side, that's where it would be heading down towards. It could very easily still lose a 60% move and do such by finally coming back to an area where it came from back in 2013, an area it broke out of less than 2 years ago. And people would talk about that as, oh, that's over for it. And you know what? It might be, but it's also normal oftentimes in volatility to play its own volatility, which is pretty big. And when you have situations where you go from point A low of 200 and change to 20,000 or about an 80x move, and really we can say from this move, this low in here, which is like 152, greater than a 100x move, that if you end up going from 20,000 down to 1,000, you only have a 20x loss after over a 100x gain. So then you, from this 20x loss, maybe you have another 100x gain or an 80x gain. That's just high volatility doing what high volatility does. Regardless of the fact, it still needs to get above this 18 average of highs long term. We see this number is close to 9,000. It is declining, so that number would be, or will be starting to decline now. It is flat, but until, if price action doesn't go up pretty much ASAP as we're heading into a new month now, it is going to be declining. Let's move on next to some altcoins. Let's take a look at NLC2. I talked about that yesterday. And on its monthly time frame, it doesn't have enough months. But for the month, it's down 27.91%. For the week, notice this volume in here. We're going to talk a lot about that. And I mean, you don't see anything because of the fact of when this market opened on Bittrex. As this has been going on, this coin that is for close to 2 years now. What I like about this coin, that they actually have their team, a good decent amount of people, albeit a lot of them working part-time, and ambassadors like Johnny Chan and ambassadors like Joe Theismann on their site. This is for poker and fantasy sports. That's like a company, a penny stock, because it's 0.08, it's like 4/5 of a penny when you calculate about 250 Satoshi. But the price action, of course, had its dip down, made its move up. Beautiful rally in here, going from 150 Satoshi up to about 400 change. That's better than a 3x move. And then coming back to this area where it came from, volatility doing what volatility does, and now having its move from 160, it's came up close to 300 today, so almost doubling within a span of 3 days. Looking at this, just going back and for some more days, because you couldn't see it too well as I was showing that first day. Call it a glitch, but it's whatever. This is what I like about markets, how they move. You got up move, it goes down. And when you have these larger moves where you go from 230 up to 500, and you have a 2-point X move or 2-point decimal move, and then have the buybacks from your selling up here from the buy, all this buying, and then buying from all this selling, and now I'm starting to sell what I bought down here and all this. It's just magnificent how that works. Now when we look at the volume in here, it has just been wild when you look at what started on this day, and it has just been going on for quite some time, as any of these previous days in here just didn't have the volume that's going on right now. So back in here, we can see on the left hand side we have the data and volume, with the 20 representing the 20-day average, or 20 period average, in this case that 20-day. 504,000 coins was the volume, and in here we have about another 500,000, and then in here before the December rally 500,000, then during the rally 2 million coins, 500,000, and in here we're talking 500,000. So 500,000 was a very much an average traded day. And then on this day, 23 million, 5 million, every single day is showing consistent volume, both up and down. Let's look at this on the 4-hour term time frame, and we just can see just a lot of the big volume periods here. There's a 10 million volume 4-hour period in here, a large 5.8, 5 5.4, 5.5 in here, and just consistent volume along the board. And we take a look at this even on a short-term level, 15-minute time frame, at the top of a key move, that's normal. And then you have this in here, and the price isn't really moving much at all, staying within the 18. Let's take a look at this on a 5. And we have these two periods here. Let's look at this even more in depth at the 1-minute time frame. And I don't know what to make of this. I did copy and paste the last 100 trades when I noticed this was going on. Let me just show you on a spreadsheet. And this is already sorted first by type and then by time. So it starts off at 8:52 this morning. Price is 246 Satoshi. How many were, in this case, bought by the buyer, and then what the price of the transaction was. So we have all of these 856. So we have somebody who bought it up from 241 to 260. Overall, the net buys some that of 429,000 plus coins for 1.06 Bitcoin, and the net sells 476. I'd have to think that the big game player was on both sides of the trade, selling at around 249 and buying at around 236. Not too sure, of course, because I didn't trade at all during any of this time period. I did trade shortly before, though. And I'm not trading anywhere near this kind of volume. I don't even own a Bitcoin worth of this coin, and not even close to that. Although I plan to in the future, as this is something I've been starting to play more aggressively during its decline, which has been nice to see that it had such, because that was a good accumulation phase. Throwing that part aside, as far as, because that was days ago. 8:56 is when the selling here started, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to resort this. I'm going to delete this. And resort it back by time. So it starts off with somebody buying at 852. That's like a whatever deal because it's only a little over 1,000. And then we have sell orders being filled at 246, decently amount, all the way down to 237 at 857.34. This is where it gets interesting because then somebody buys it back up. First off, we had 231, so someone put a sell order in there. I mean, obviously someone's going to take that every time. And then someone buys it at 260, 2 seconds after the fact. Now, I understand what it's like because I had a situation a day or two ago where I'm like, I think it was yesterday, where I'm like, well, let's just buy now because I don't know if it's going to go down any much in the next few seconds. And it did, actually. I was like, man, I was like 5 seconds too early. But with that being said, that's just 2 seconds later all the buys come in, buying at 231, but really 260. Okay, that's what he bought it up to. Okay, I understand that now. So it's buying it all the way up to 260, a bunch of them in whatever orders, I guess. And then on this 40 period, continuation buys 4 seconds later, 261, 265. Then 17 seconds later, a small buy, buy up to 247. But then 7 seconds later, it gets sold down again for decent amounts. Like there's 37,000 here. I have a hard time understanding exactly how it works, what the tangible reasons to make sense of it. But what I will is I'll scroll this down so you can take a look and see here if this can mean anything for yourself. Now let's take a look at Aid coin. And what I like about it is its moves, which is why I got into it. Having plays like this, just magnificent. And now as far as the chart setup is concerned, after sustaining a good period of time within this level of support area, it got above it again. And I mean, it's always had these moves. So when it first happens, do you trust it? Well, you know, if it was able to hold this area, it did, that it would get, that's the one step it was needed to get moving. And it got moving, establishing this level of high. So now if it's going to correct, it's very important to correct better than what this level of resistance was. So where did it correct? It corrected really this level, but more importantly, this little area in here, which What I'll do is I'm going to put a line on this now. I'm going to remove all this drawing tools. And take a look at this when I shorten this out, how big of a level this support actually happens to be, because major support established around 800 Satoshi. And from that point, after this many days of just doing a little sideways stuff in here, like 5 or 6, but yesterday with a nice higher low, higher high, but more importantly I liked its higher low, and today I like its higher high, and of course with its higher low in place. So starting to draw uptrend lines just like we did in here. And now a twice hit area of resistance, once at 1100, next again at 1241. Previously way back when at around 1600. So we know little areas of where it can go to, but the possibilities of big moves coming into play is what I find very important. Let's shorten out the time frame, 4 hours, see if we can make sense of 805. It was like a meh area, I guess you could say, and it was better, 787 up to this area. But yeah, it held this conjunction area, it held this comeback area from this move, its original one. So it works out to be that of a key move. But as we see this amongst the 4 hour, there's a declining 18 with prices staying below such. Now we see it above it and correcting within it. It has been doing it since the breakout at 23 hours on the 29th. And I bought at 855 right in here. Right point here. I don't like doing so. I mean, I'm happy it's working out as it is, of course. Because I would have rather bought down here where my original buy orders were. Because I sold up here, yeah, of course. But I didn't want to buy at this price because of the extreme volatility that was available. So I let the thing market played out. It did very well in holding this level of support. I last sold somewhere in this upper nice area here. So therefore buying back at 855, I think I might have sold even like 990 something. So it worked out. I'm going to make the buy now because I think it's going to go higher. Then I can place my sell order up in here somewhere. And game on, basically. And let's continue on to Loop Ring, LRC, which it's having a very volatile period ever since January the 16th, or the last 2 weeks of the month, after doing all of this yada yada sideways movement. Having a spot where you go from 1100 up to about 3000, close to a 3x move. And now it has lost half its value, or almost to such. I drew these two lines in for probably Fibonacci. Well, it looks like the Fibonacci area. However, within these markets, where do they need to hold for this type of move? Just because it's had many red down days in a row doesn't mean that's all bad long term. In fact, that's good for me because nothing but selling up here, nothing but buying now. And I've had a couple buy orders hit after having several sell orders hit. And within such, maybe it's my buy and sell orders too. It looks like Fibonacci as well. It would make sense that that's where my orders would be. I don't remember why I put these lines in. It's another thing why I'm saying it. With that being said, however, big area where it needs to hold 1250 up to 1390 for this little area in here. This general area of resistance is in at about 18. Well, the higher area is about 1913. Its congestion area is closer to about 17. So it's a pierce below or at the lower end of its congestion area now. And quite frankly, I wouldn't be surprised if any weird thing happens in the sense of we bottom at any point in here, whether now or in this lower point, maybe down to 1350. And then from that point on, we're just going to go up to neutral. Wouldn't be a surprise there. I wouldn't be surprised if we stay neutral for a long period of time. Maybe go sideways. Something like this is neutral for a long period at whatever price range. And I wouldn't be surprised if this even goes back down to here and does it, or if it goes down to like 500 Satoshi. Because these things just move wildly amongst high volatility. So that's all I'm going to continue expecting, is very good volatility amongst these markets. And just let the market do what it does, because as it plays out, it already hit this bottom here a few days ago, a couple sideways, so it does look as if it's probably going to head lower. Short term, you see a market have its big move and just no buying pressure really at all from the top. There is a little bit here, and that's what it's coming off of, but it's already given that back, and it's at the lower end of where it had that move. So therefore, it's only really decent buying spot. It is already given back in the most recent period here. That having a little price correction coming down a bit more, totally not a surprise. Let's talk next about propositions on the Super Bowl. And there will be no plays right now. I'm just first off, you got to go tails minus 105 on the coin toss. Yeah. Donald Trump tweets February 3rd over 5. The over 5 was minus 110, the under 5. I don't know what the answer would be, but they actually have props like this. If you're a Donald Trump follower and you just know his tweeting schedule so well, this could be a wager you might be able to find an edge on either the over or the under. Tony Romo quotes, "Here we go, over 2.5 plus 150." Here we go. I really do like Tony Romo, but I don't know where to get data to see how often he says it. It's pretty easy to get other statistics. I bet this last year and I lost. Players to attempt a pass, 2.5. Basically, will somebody else other than the two main guys, Jared Goff or Tom Brady, throw a pass? And I remember hearing in New England last year for a long time, only Tom Brady is allowed to throw. And it worked out in last year's game. Julian Edelman, who was a quarterback in college, was out last year in the Super Bowl. So I thought, yeah, no, let's do it. And then I was watching the Super Bowl last year, and then that pass happened. No, not the one you might be thinking of, but the one to Tom Brady. And Tom Brady just dropped it. It was like sticking in on a Madden game, a receiver with a 40 rating and watching him catch the ball. It literally looked that way. It was bad. And then later on after that, Nick Foles caught a touchdown. So four guys threw last year in the Super Bowl. But I'd have a big, high opinion on the under at minus 130. A bit of a high juice with the minus 120 fair line. Some of the props are minus 110 across both sides, but I don't know who else would pass the ball. I really don't. First to happen, Aaron Donald sack minus 120, Brady interception minus 120. A good chance neither of them might not happen. Brady probably doesn't throw an interception, so I really have a higher lean towards this. Brady hasn't been sacked yet in the playoffs, so something to keep in mind as well. Romo Stradamus to be said. Really? I mean, really? I would have to think that 5-1 odds, 1 in 5, isn't that bad of a bet. And I mean, this is so borderline, so gray wagering. I mean, it's almost figure skating like in a way, but not really as far as a winner is concerned. And then we have some crosses. Harden points versus Utah the day before crossed against Brady attempts. Harden's on fire. We also got some guys, well, we got Chris Paul back on Houston with getting more minutes per game each time. I'd almost consider Brady to win that, but that's just something I thought. And there was a bunch of other ones. Westbrook points, rebounds, and assists versus C.J. Anderson rushing yards. So C.J. Anderson is the underdog among such, and I don't think that I mean, a lot of this would be basically on Todd Gurley. Really, it comes down to Gurley. If you think Gurley's really injured, then maybe you take C.J. Anderson. Russell Westbrook is probably going to get about he's a triple-double machine. So let's just talk about 15 or 25 rebounds and assists. And he's going to get about 25 real points. So we're looking at about 50 number here, probably close to 50. 40 to 50 for sure. So that's an area here. So C.J. Anderson, Maybe check the differential with his actual rushing yards. But Curry, 3 points made on February the 2nd. So we're looking at versus Brandon Cook's receptions. I'm not going to make a play on this. This one here I find very, very interesting. Boston Bruins playing the Washington Capitals versus, I just don't think there's going to be many field goals for Gostowski in a higher scoring hockey game. I kind of like Boston there, although I'm not big on the price. This one I really, 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 really like, actually. It might be one of my favorite. McDavid goals against Gronkowski, touchdowns, -20. I'm not 120 on each side. I'm not a big fan of. McDavid is playing Montreal. I really don't like the chance Gronkowski gets a touchdown. I think that's exactly what they're trying to say amongst this bet. Big chance it's a push because neither of them get such. Harden versus Goff attempts. So same thing as it was before. Lead change in the fourth quarter. This is a fun bet more than anything. And a lot of the Super Bowls have been competitive in this way, so I'm leaning towards the yes at plus 220. Outcome of the first challenge. I mean, Todd McVay and Bill Belichick, they're not going to challenge unless they're probably going to be right. Super Bowl MVP, and I just got a whole bunch of defensive players on this list. What we learned from 2 years ago is you really don't want to take another offensive player that's not a quarterback or a Jerry Rice type player to be MVP, and there is no Jerry Rice type players at wide receiver or running back in this game. Jerry Rice, Emmitt Smith, the big guys that are just make Sports Illustrated covers and all these and commercials. You're not going to get that out of Julian Edelman or out of Brandon Cooks. I really see the quarterback winning the MVP if it's because of the offensive-driven game. But if it works that you can't give it to someone on the offense, then it's going to go to someone on the defense. Aaron Donald, 16-1. The only reason I'm saying this is because of Von Miller. If it's that kind of a game, then it's the Rams winning, then I'm probably going to be looking at Aaron Donald as the favorite to do it, but is 16 too low of a number? It might be. That's why I got meh on here. And these are all long shots. Dante Fowler, Trey Flowers, Aqib Talib, Devin McCourty, Stephon Gilmore. Especially with the corners, because if it works out that the Patriots win the game, say 27-14, and Brady has a average game of whatever, and no other offensive player does anything really, and Aqib Talib gets maybe a touchdown interception, maybe he gets 3 or 4 tackles, maybe he gets a second interception, or maybe he has a good return if he does that. I don't even think he returns balls. The same thing with McCourty or Gilmore. They get a big touchdown interception, and they maybe add something more to it as well. And that's the type of game. And they're the type of players that are probably going to get it. So I'm looking more towards guys of the sack categories, with guys like Dante Fowler and Aaron Donald, and guys like Gilmore and Talib to get picks. Thank you for tuning in.